Hello everyone and welcome to Threes to Wound. My name's Reese and I'll be your host on this adventure looking at something that's very, very overdue. We're talking about the Krieg boys, we're talking about the Death Korps. We're going back in time, which wasn't really that long ago, but back to the start of this new edition of Kill Team. They launched the box set, much excitement. I finally painted them, played some games, now I can talk about them a bit more. So let's jump in and break down the Veteran Guardsman. So a little disclaimer, as always, I know I'm behind the 8 ball. I'm a little excited though, because finally, after much hard work and much squinting and doing this a lot, I finally got my Veteran Guardsman painted to a point where I'm really happy. Just letting you know, I am by no means a pro or an expert player at Kill Team. I am just someone who loves it. I love the game. I love painting the models. I love collecting all the different teams. And I love just sharing my thoughts and talking about what's going on. So there will be a lot of players out there who may be competitive players or have played a lot more games with the Guardsman than me. I bow to your wisdom if you know better than me. But I'm definitely going to throw out what I think and what I like about different bits and pieces. And that's definitely what the comment section below is for. So if you've got some ideas and ways I can improve my list, ways I can make things a little bit better, or things that you've learnt playing lots more games with them, please share it below, get involved, because it's about building community around all of this, and be really, really excited to hear your thoughts. Now we've disclaimed all that we've needed to disclaim, let's jump in and start with the absolute basics. We're going to break down the basic operatives, and surprise, surprise, there's no difference. One says veteran, one doesn't. So, video over. No. But what this does show us is that, at least initially, you don't have to remember whole new stat lines, weapon characteristics and all that for your basic guys. What we're seeing with these guys were the flagship, if you will, of these new, more bespoke teams, or the teams that what Kill Team is meant to be. We see in the compendium that the normal guardsman teams are great, but they're much more rigid. They don't have a whole bunch of specialists per se, apart from gunners and heavy gunners and comms guys, which are, I guess, standard things you'd expect to see. What we see in the Veteran Guardsmen and what makes them super unique, apart from the really cool models, and also the fact that you can model them any way you like. I mean, the Krieg are just one example of a veteran guard team. You can play any type of guardsman models as that. Obviously, you just got to model them correctly to be carrying the bits and pieces. Or if you've got really nice friends, maybe you can test out some bits and pieces to see if that's a team you'd like to play. But it's the customization and it's about the specialists. That's what makes these guys special. So a classic, sneaky box set work here, but you can't build every type of model or every type of specialist in the one box set if you got that. I mean, technically, if you got handy and you're very good with clippers and some green stuff, you could probably mold them all that way, or at least get a lot closer. But you will find you can't build every specialist, so you do need to make some decisions very early on with your team before you can really play test to see which ones suit your style or what you think you may need. For me, I'd already played a few games with the regular guardsmen, and although it didn't give me a huge insight, as we said, about specialists, it did let me see some fun parts about units I liked. I really liked the sniper, so I knew I was going to build a sniper. Not to mention in this, he's pretty great. But there's also the fun ones. What are the things I thought I was going to be doing, the playstyles I thought I would initially be doing? That's sort of what pushed me to make the decisions I did. So go with me here with each of these decisions. You may have alternating opinions or differing opinions. Awesome, we'd love to hear why you chose the specialists you did in the box set. Otherwise, the other thing to do, get out there, jump online and get shopping on, I guess, on eBay or Gumtree or something like that. I'm sure there are lots of people selling that second half of the box set. Might be a great way to be able to build the whole extended roster of 20 units, which is kind of what you're meant to do anyway, and then picking and choosing your team for that, as well as the ancillary support as well. There's obviously an option just to take an extra 4 guardsmen, which we'll talk about later, but that could be a great option. The first thing is to select your team, and when you're selecting your team, this is the list. That's what you're looking at. It's 10 operatives total. You obviously always have to take your leader operative, and then it's 9 other operatives all made from the other specialisms, or you can just take regular lasgun guys as well. You can have an unlimited amount of regular guys. Each other one can be taken once. Please note that doesn't include the gunner veteran. Each one of those operatives with those weapon choices can be taken once. So i.e. only one flamer, one grenade launcher. You can't double up on those special weapons. Let's jump in and see which specialist I built, and I'll break down how I've been using them and why I think they're good or not so good. So the first guy, we've got the Sergeant Veteran. Now, this is your leader operative. The one thing I've really liked about this new edition of Kill Team is that it actually encourages you to get your leader operatives as the heroes of your team to play that style and get up there and get in the fight. Fisticuff special. Make sure that they are having an impact on the game. That was, I guess, one of the biggest weaknesses of the last edition, Kill Team 2018, was that you pretty much were encouraged to hide your leader, because losing your leader meant losing the ability to regenerate command points, and there was also effects on morale and stuff like that. I'm really glad in this new edition, morale is gone because we're trapped behind enemy lines. There's nowhere else to go. They can't run away. And then also it encourages you to use your leader characters and models like you should. They're the heroes. They're leading from the front. And it's very thematic amongst especially the veteran guard. The one thing I love about this team, it's all about synergy, and it's all about maximizing not just the operatives to do the best job that they can do, but helping to make their teammates better, spotting for each other, backing each other up, finding ways to boost, heal, all those different bits and pieces. That's what makes this such a strong team, and that's what's obviously held it in high regard still in the competitive scene. That I think there's been quite a few tournaments now where really good players are playing them, and the veteran guardsmen are still amongst that top. This will obviously switch and change as new and more teams are released, but even with the Tower now being out there, the Thousand Suns team, the Warp Coven, those things we're already seeing the veteran guard are still holding their own, and especially when the other team in the box, who's considered one of the best, which is the commandos, they're still holding their own against them. I'd say these are harder to use. Building their synergies is a bit tougher, but in the hands of a good player, or even just a player who wants to have a lot of fun, they're still really good. In saying all that, that's a roundabout way of me saying I built my Sergeant for close combat. I want to get him up there, and he's one of the few options in this list that you can use to provide a bit of punch. So with the three options he had, the power weapon, the chainsword, or the bayonet, I knew I wasn't going to be using him for distance, so bayonet was out, down to the chainsword and the power weapon, and I just think you can't go past the power weapon. Lethal 5+, it's super effective, does what it says on the tin, which is exciting, and it's one of the few ways that you can get a power weapon into this list. So it's a good bit of surprise punch, or at least making your opponent's second guess if your sergeant is maybe guarding some of your more shooty or vulnerable units. They've got to worry about contending with that. The other great thing, and I always say this, if you can get plasma in your list, you do it. He can carry a plasma pistol, and I think you should. It's a no-brainer compared to your las pistol or bolt pistols. There's no reason you would take those over this. It's a great way. It's effective against armor. It's effective against everything, which plasma should be, again, thematic. So that's the way I've equipped him, and so far, so good. The next one I built was the Sniper Veteran, because sniper rifles are cool. I went rule of cool on this one, but the thing I found out after I built it was that these snipers are better than most regular snipers. What makes them so good? Well, instead of the normal mortal wound 1 on a critical hit, they're mortal wound 3. So they're hitting with a bit more punch. Not only that, but they're more accurate as well. They're hitting on 2s as opposed to 3s with the regular snipers. So we're starting to see that veteran element. We've taken what was already a basic good unit in regular guard, and we're making them slightly better. So I love the thematic thing that this is a grizzled veteran. I think of Mad Larkin from Gaunt's Ghost. You know, those veteran snipers who have been around for a very long time, plying their trade, popping enemies' heads from afar. So this is really, really cool and really thematic. The other thing that's really strong is this sniper has the extra ability to get into position quicker and not have as big a drawbacks to do that. They can still shoot when they move, so like a normal las gun, which is really, really cool. Obviously the drawback being that they are exposed, but once you get them into cover and once they activate on that turn, if they haven't done a move, a charge, a fallback, etc., they then have the silent rule. So it's really good. It encourages you to play them like they should be. Once you've got them in position, they're ready to hunker down, and that's what we want to see. But they do have a bit of duality of threat that late game, if they need to move out or if they need to move and shoot, they can still be really, really dangerous, which is great. So that's the one strength that they've got, is they're great at what they do, but then they've also got backup. They've got a bit of duality of threat, and that mortal wound 3, for a sniper rifle, I know it's only on crits, but still it's pretty powerful. Hitting that consistently with a gun that's that accurate, you're going to get a few through. Next up is the gunner option. Now, in the box set, there was an option to create 2, or at least you could probably create more, but obviously to keep more specialists of a different ilk possible to build, I decided to keep it to just the 2. And it took me the longest to make this decision because I knew which guns I liked from other teams. I played quite a bit with different melter weapons, plasma. But as I said, you always choose plasma. The house always wins, especially when it uses plasma. So that was my first choice. It was an easy choice. The ability for it to be AP1 up to AP2 when you supercharge, I'll take that risk, you know. There's ways to get reroll ones, etc. So you're always taking that risk to always supercharge. It's a lot more fun. It also gives the opponent no chance of surviving. But it is a real no-brainer, so definitely plasma if you can. The next one, well, this is where I had to really think. I really like the idea of the melter, but trying to think a bit more bigger picture, I was like, the melter is the perfect one against a lot of teams that are going to have a lot of power armor and all that, but I didn't really have anything that was sort of anti-horde in this list. There are options with orbital strikes and a few other weapons and maybe frag grenades for a bit of, you know, getting rid of culling groups of troops. For culling groups of troops. That does work. It sounded weird, but it worked. And in saying all that, I went for the flamer. It's not necessarily the strongest choice, and I'm sure there'll be other people. I think the grenade launcher is probably underrated. I know with my Gene Stealer cults, heresy, that's the one to go with. I love the grenade launcher. I've had a huge success with that. In retrospect, I might have worked out a way to finagle a model and build that, but I do love the area denial of the flamer, and it's a consistent threat, a bit like what we have with the plas. The flamer has the same thing. You're hitting regularly and you're dealing out damage. It might not be massive damage, but it does make your opponent stop and think. Next up is the Zealot Veteran, and again, so thematic, fits in really well with all the lore of the Warhammer universe, all being Emperor Botherers and all that, and I love the idea of a guy running into combat while reading a book. What could possibly go wrong? He's got his La Rosarius wrapped around his wrist there as well. It's all very cool. The biggest strength of this guy, and especially in a squishy team like Veteran Guardsman or Guardsman in general, they've only got the 5+ save, so he's got the built-in ability to be able to re-roll his saves. That's great, and that's free just for having that model. So a little bit more survivability, great if you're putting him on objectives, or great if you're trying to make it so your opponent can't get some of their tac ops for units dying maybe, or vice versa your own. Anything that's keeping you guys alive a little longer. I know that they are, trained to die for the Emperor, but if we can keep them there a little bit longer, it's always good for the team. The other benefit they've got, for 1 AP, they can use Uplifting Primer, which means anything square around them, any operatives in square around them, when they either shoot or fight in close combat, they can actually upgrade one of their 5+ into a critical. So a good way to get a sneaky extra crit in a fight, especially a crucial fight. Again, situational, might not always come up, but I do like it. And again, I picture him reading his book and pumping up his teammates and getting them involved. It's one of those ones that could be, it's one of those ones that could be, a great story to tell your friends of that time he uplifted his your whole team into having a much better battle or winning a crucial combat. So I like this one. Not as practical as some of the others, still cool. What army made of squishy individuals would be complete without a medic? And that was the next one I built because you just have to. It's great. It'd be crazy not to build your medic. I love the medic model. I might not have mentioned it, but you can probably see with a lot of the stats, I'll have the stat cards up there as well. Most of the time, the stats are the same across the board. These specialists, it's more the things they get added to that. So just keep in mind, I'll usually mention if there is a difference. But as you can see here, he's just a regular lasgun guy, so it still means you're getting good normal regular troopers. They're just getting specialties as well. This guy's got 2. The first one, as the name would suggest, medic! It's there to bring guys back to life when they die. So if they go down within square of your medic is actually able to spend an AP. They can dash out of danger, bringing them back closer to the medic, and they live to fight another day. I think this is really handy. again, a squishy team, you're going to want to bring some guys back from the dead. And especially if the crucial, you sniper operative or a heavy weapons guy, someone you really, really need to keep in the fight. In the few games I have played, this has saved my butt. I brought my plasma guy back to life. He got back in the fight and absolutely tore it up. If I didn't have that option, if I didn't have the medic in the team, your plasma gun's one and done. Keep in mind, when your character dies, it can't be within engagement range of the enemy, which makes sense because if they've just been stabbed and the medic's like, hang on a sec, I'll just patch him up and get him back in a jiff. So it does really only retain mainly to shooting attacks. It'll still come up. Don't forget, this is also where those little tokens with the +1, -1 come in. Both operatives will lose an AP until the end of the next turning point as well if your medic does use this. So just keep that in mind, but also for the operative that got brought back from the dead. Makes sense, they just got brought back from the dead. Medkit's great. It basically allows you to roll 2d3 and bring that many wounds back to a friendly model as long as you're within triangle of them. So again, very thematic. Combat medic runs in, starts healing him up, gets him back in the fight. Again, I mentioned earlier, plasma gunners, if they're going to be overcharging, this is a great one to keep them in the fight, but also to getting troops who are going to shoot or might be doing something where they're going to require full health, charging for an objective, climbing something. This is a great way to make sure they're not going to have any negatives minusing their ability to be effective because they're wounded or injured. So keep that in mind. This is a great one, and one of the other reasons you take a medic. Next up was the man with the phone. It's the comms veteran. You're taking guard. You're going to be issuing orders. You should have a comms guy. I think it goes without saying, it's a bit of a no-brainer. Make sure you do, because obviously he can relay orders to the whole battlefield, so it's not just the operatives within range of your sergeant. We'll look at some orders a little bit later on. But yeah, this is a really good one. It's really handy. It does cost the operative an APL to do that, but it's very handy again for making sure your full team is working to the maximum benefit of whatever that order is, whether it's charging, shooting, whatever it is. It's definitely worth getting across to the whole team, especially later in the fight when your operatives are going to be a bit more spread out. Early on it might not be important, but later in the game it could be crucial. Signal's the other one I really like. This again costs an APL to do, but basically lets you take one of his APL and pass it to a teammate anywhere in the battlefield within Pentagon. So that's not anywhere in the battlefield. That's a side. But you know what I mean? Like anywhere within Pentagon. But this is a great one. Maybe, as we talked about the medic just before, we could pump up an operative's APL again, making them more efficient, back into the fight quicker. Is it getting you an extra dash or an extra move? Is it getting you an extra ability to move, dash, shoot? Turning one of you guys effectively into a Space Marine, at least for one turning point, is a pretty good trade-off for one APL. Hardened Veteran is a grizzly man by nature and a grizzly man in demeanor, but a very cool one. He's got a couple of different benefits the other guys don't have. He's effectively got Feel No Pain, or his own version of Disgustingly Resilient. Any damage he takes, roll a dice, 5+, he can ignore that, which is really, really handy. It also doesn't get his APL affected by any modifiers, which is great. So again, things like your medic, if this is used there, that's something that means that it can't affect his APL. So he's kind of like a Death Guard guy, but don't tell anyone because the Inquisition will set him on fire. His other strength, and that'll be funny in a second, is because he's got a bionic arm. Get it? Whip. Bionic arm, he's strong. Basically means he's better in close combat. So again, a good surprise for an unwary opponent, and another operative who can give you at least a little bit of a close combat threat, or someone you can send in against, I guess a guard equivalent type unit and feel like you're going to have some success, which in this list isn't always possible. He's still got the las gun, so he's still your las gun guy at heart. That's probably what you're using for predominantly, but in those key moments, he can punch on, and that's great. Fisticuffs. I also chose to do a little bit of a customization job on this guy, not because I'm great at it by any stretch of the imagination, but I did sort of read that rule of the hardened veteran, and I stole the chest of the I think, demo guy and gave him that. So instead of having the little decorative medals, which were great, don't get me wrong, it gave him that extra bit of chunky bit of armor, which I kind of imagine him stealing off some other unit or it's a bit of a trench or discarded tank that he's kind of made his own. That was my little modification to it. I think it worked pretty well. The last guy I went with here was the spotter guardsman, mainly because the binoculars looked cool. I think this is a really cool model. Again, pretty thematic. I like the idea of setting this guy up to make your team better, and we talked about the synergies within your team. So this is another veteran who works really well with that. He's obviously got the mortar barrage, which is a great one for helping attack enemy operatives while staying in cover. It is silent, so it's quite a strong attack while letting him remain in cover. So this is another sniper-esque operative in that way. He's also got the spotter ability. It does cost 2 AP, and it does have a few extra rules and caveats around exactly how it works. But effectively, it lets him select a teammate within a certain distance to activate next and treat another operative as if they have the engage order. So this is a great way to pop something out of cover. Could be Gene Stealers, Gene Stealer Colt, guys that are lurking, commandos, whatever, guys that are lurking in cover and could potentially be about to do a big charge, or it's a heavy weapon, crucial unit, could be a target for attack op, and allow you to pop that guy, or at least take some good shots at him like he's got an engage order. So again, more synergy work, and that was kind of why I included this guy. I like the extra versatility and utility he added to the team. Now, sadly, to the units that didn't make the cut. Let's have a moment's silence. That'll do. So, first up is the Bruiser. I like this guy, and I really like the model too. I really love the idea of him literally just having a big, heavy bit of metal bombing knocker that he's just going to try and crack blokes with. It's very World War One, and I was tempted with that, a bit of a surprise, more close combat punch. I don't mind sneaking a little bit in there. I just couldn't justify that trade-off considering the other options I'd already sort of snuck in there with the hardened veteran and the leader. The trench color gives you stun, and it also gives you a bit more consistency with the damage being 3-3. So pretty cool. There's definitely something to be said for stun. I'm slowly starting to respect the uses of stun a little more. I'm getting better at understanding how to use that to affect your opponent more. I still find it a bit situational. I don't always find it super effective. I do like the Bruiser rule that it does have, which effectively lets you ignore one attack in close combat. Basically, you don't take the damage from that. So that can be crucial to keeping this operative alive. And as we've sort of tapped into the other thing, anything that keeps your squishy guys alive is a good thing. I just couldn't see the consistency in this model worth taking out anyone else. Let me know if you've had good experience with them. I'd love to know the Bruiser stories. But for me, well, the Demolition Man. Not that one, but this one still counts. This was another hard cut for me. I really wanted to take this model, and I love the idea of being able to plant the mine. I love the area denial that can bring to the table. The versatility, again, very in theme. I just thought for myself, when I was building this team, still being a bit new to the game, I wasn't sure if I was going to find that the strength that it brought through that was going to be enough to keep them in the team, if that makes sense. I was worried I would misuse this operative a lot, as I'm still not a super gun player. I'm sure there's people out there who are great at using it and maximizing it, but I just kind of felt like it pigeonholed him a bit too much to be able to untap that special ability. So for me, didn't make the cut, and I'm a bit sorry. The last one, and this is an interesting one. I would love to know if people are using this operative a lot, but it was the confidant veteran, who I think is cool in theory. Gets pretty much, it's like having a second veteran sergeant. Gets a lot of the same loadout, gear, equipment. Also allows, once your leader dies, to keep being able to issue the orders. This operative takes that over. So really good way to, if you are being a bit riskier with your sergeant, losing them doesn't hurt you quite as much, which I think is really, really clever. And I also really like Directive. Directive's a great one to spend that extra APL to basically activate another one of your operatives straight away after and treating it as GA1. So that's good. It doesn't exclude your normal guardsman as well. I think it's really, really handy being able to, I guess, speed up the amount of activations you have, less Overwatch incoming. Also, if there's a crucial time to get an objective, achieve something, this is a great way to get a double activation. I thought it was okay, but again, I couldn't override losing one of the other operatives I was building to take this guy. So now, as we mentioned earlier, orders are something the veteran guardsmen still have. It's a trait they share with the regular guardsmen as well, and it's super effective again. It's really, really important though, don't forget, it is attached to your leader operative. Lose your leader, lose orders. So keep that in mind. Obviously, you do need your leader to be the focal point of where that order is coming from, so their placement is crucial, but also you can use your comms guy to help boost that effectiveness as well. Move, move, move is, as the name suggests, it's about moving. It's an extra triangle movement, so probably great in those first initial turns, getting guys up the board into position early on, or even late game if you can use it to sneak them onto an objective or sneak them into cover to keep them alive, can be pretty handy. Take aim, as the name suggests, is all about letting you guys take aim. They can re-roll any or all rolls of 1. Do keep in mind things like mortar barrages, tactical assets don't gain access to this, so just keep that in mind. No cheating, it's frowned upon around here. But a good one to keep you guys accurate, especially early on in the game when you want that mass firepower to maximum effect. Hold position is about increasing your defense. It lets you reroll any of your defense dice that you rolled a 1 on, which is great, but do keep in mind there are limitations. Any of your operatives who are issued that order for that turning point can't do a dash or a charge, so just keep that in mind. You don't want to stitch yourself up late game where there might be a crucial dash or charge that you need to get off. It's probably best used early in the game, but I'm sure it pops up other times as well. Fix bayonets! That's right, a Krieg special. If you can't use a shovel, we'll stick with the bayonet. This one is all about re-rolling your 1s in close combat. So especially if you are fighting against teams that are very stabby and going to get in close and give you a hard time, this can be a great way to help you fight your way out of it, especially if you use your mass numbers of operatives to try and overwhelm your opposition versus getting picked off one at a time. Use this, you'll hit better. I'll touch very briefly here on the support options. It was really fun in my first 3 or 4 games to get caught up with all the different ones, with the strafing run and all the excitement you have of those options. They all sound great and they're not bad. The catch is they're all one-off. You get to choose 2, but once you use them, they're done. And their effectiveness, especially against good players, can be pretty limited. My personal opinion is to, and you can argue, that's fine, I'll hear you out, is to take the 4 extra guardsmen that you can take as an option. Having those extra 4 bodies maxes you up to the 14 person limit or 14 character limit you can take in your team. It's just so much more handy, it's so much more versatile. It's weight of fire, it's, you know, getting weight of numbers, lots of operatives working together, lots of las guns, giving your opponent a lot more to think about, and also ties in nicely with a few of your tac ops, which we'll talk about in a sec. I just think this is the strongest choice. If you don't agree, jump in the comments, let me know why. The others are so much fun, and if you're just playing for fun and enjoyment, please choose them because they are hilarious, and seeing your opponent's face when they do work well, it's amazing and it's hilarious, and no one else really getting anything like this. It's so unique. But if you are thinking of winning the game or thinking a bit more tactically, I think it makes more sense to have the extra operatives. The next thing we're looking at is tac ops. Now, note as well that you've only got access normally to security, or there is the Krieg or veteran guardsman specialty one. I would always lean towards taking that because it's custom made for these guys. Those, when you read them, you know, they are made to help you have the most chance of success, and I think you should lean into that. Security will be great depending on some of the mission objectives you play. I think that would be the only thing that would make you change your mind, is if you thought the security matched up better with the type of mission you were playing. I still think maybe 7 times out of 10 you will take the veteran guardsman specific ones. Boots on the ground is all about getting bodies up and all over the board, and that's what these guys excel at, especially if you did take those extra 4 operatives. The longer the game goes, the easiest this is going to get as your opponent spreads out and you're pushing up and down the board. You've got to have more operatives within Pentagon of your deployment zone, and the same for more within of your enemy's deployment zone. So it is definitely achievable. You get the extra victory point for doing it twice. So fingers crossed, with the amount of bodies and weight of numbers, you should be able to finagle this one, especially against teams with really low model counts. This should be one you should push pretty hard. Stand fast really leans into you playing the objective, which is always what you should be doing. At the end of the turning point, if your operatives control 2 objectives and you control more than your opponent, you will basically score a victory point. If you can repeat it, you get 2. This one again is encouraging to get those bodies up the board quickly, especially those early turns. There's a lot of game styles that encourage you to get those bodies up there quickly. There's a lot of objective markers, 2 or 3 close to your setup. So if you can snag 2 quickly, and again, other teams that don't have as many bodies as you, may not be maneuverable like yourself, you're going to get those early, and fingers crossed you can lock that away. Glory in Death couldn't possibly lean into the Krieg way of warfare anymore. If you lost more of your guys than your opponent, but you managed to score more victory points on the main objective in achieving that, you get 2 victory points. I really like this one. As we talked about earlier, take those extra 4 guys, give yourself those bodies. They're Imperial Guardsmen. They're meant to die. Even though they're Veteran Guardsmen, they're still there to die. You know, they just took a little bit longer to get there. Glory to the Emperor of Mankind. They've got to get up the board, win those objectives, die gloriously, give you the most points, and this will help seal those really close games, especially if you've only just won or your opponent went really well with their tac ops. This can be that one that pushes you over the edge. I won't go through security. I think I've covered that in some other videos. It's obviously in the core rulebook, so go over it. They're still really suited to security. It does still play to their strengths. It's worth a look. Just have a look at what the mission is and base it on that. Let's jump into the strategic ploys and we'll go through each one just briefly and have a bit of a chat about what they do. Overcharged las guns. I actually really like this one. It's only 1 CP and it basically lets you add an overcharge ability to your las gun. So they actually don't get any better with their profile, but they do gain AP1 and they do gain hot. So they're like a poor man, very poor man's plasma gun. I think it's actually pretty fun, especially if you have taken that team full of the extra las gun operatives. It's going to let you lay down a pretty impressive amount of AP1 attacks. It does rely on your opponent to either A, not be using cover very well, or that there's a crucial target that you really need to take down that you think may be viable. It's not always appropriate, but in the right situations, it's pretty powerful. Take cover is a classic Imperial Guardsman ploy here. Basically, if you're in cover, it lets you increase your save characteristic by 1. It's very handy, especially against shooty teams. It could be the difference between losing a lot of operatives and, well, not as many. You'll still lose them, but just not as many. Into the Breach is one I really like to start the game with. It's a great way to get your guardsmen up the board really quickly. It's a free dash action that you get to do across your whole team, as long as they are obviously in your deployment zone. Hence why it's really powerful at the start of the game. Getting that extra movement really lets you get a bit of a jump on your enemy. It does mean you're spending a command point early, but I think it's pretty handy. Clear the Line is a great one for doing just as the name suggests. If you've got the opponent all up in your grill and they're trying to break through your gun line, this lets you retain, before you even roll your attack dice, you get to retain one of your attacks as an automatic hit. It's handy for helping the guardsmen who aren't necessarily the best at hitting consistently, if at all, in close combat to be a bit more damaging. It's not going to set the world on fire, but it could get you out of a sticky situation. Now we're on to tactical ploys. The first one is inspirational leadership. This basically lets your leader double down on giving out orders. So basically, I guess you get to do 2 orders for that turn, which is pretty handy if you know you wanted more than one, or if you were really umming and ahhing over which one is going to be more effective for you. Don't forget though, it does still only spread out to. So keep that in mind when you're doing it. It's still got to be effective for the operatives in the situation they're in. In Death, Atonement, again, very Krieg, and we love that. Basically, this means if an operative's killed, you can spend a CP to keep them around to the end of your next activation, and they don't count as being injured. So if you lose that much loved plasma gunner or a unit that was going to do a key charge and you just know they need to get out there and do a bit of fisticuffs, this is how you keep them alive to give them that chance. It's pretty handy, and I've seen it used to really good cinematic effect as well. Combined Arms works with the synergy of guardsmen working together. If you're shooting at one operative and you hit them, you can then, for a CP, re-roll your attack dice for the next operative shooting at that same guy. So basically bullying one guy. So if there's a key target you need to take down, or you're group activating 2 lasgun guys you got in a great spot, you really need to double down their effectiveness. It's a great way to do that. The last thing we'll look at here, guys, is equipment. I know this has been a long video and I appreciate you sticking with me. We're getting there. I hope you're enjoying what we're talking about. First up, the hotshot capacitor. Basically, this is something you can add to your lasgun guys or anyone with las weapons, so it can also be attached to pistols as well. Just makes them more effective. It can be a bit of fun to give those guys a bit more punch. I think it's better spent elsewhere, but could be a sneaky surprise if you maybe had a couple of guys you snuck up on one of the flanks with a little bit more effective las guns. Might be a bit of a nasty surprise. Rosary is the perfect example of somewhere I think your points are a little bit better spent. It basically lets you ignore the damage done by one attack dice, whether from shooting or close combat. I know myself, I've used this on my leader operative quite regularly, just to keep them alive, keep them in the fight, because we know how important the orders are, and especially because I do play a little bit more aggressively with that leader character, and especially because they're going to get into close combat with the way I've equipped them. So yeah, it's a bit of a no-brainer for me, that one. The hand axe is a hand axe. It's a close combat weapon. Could be a little bit of an interesting surprise to equip to some of your regular guys, might turn them into a bit more of a melee surprise specialist. It's not that strong and it's not that effective, so for me, I'd probably leave this one behind. Trench shovel is a really interesting one if you know there may be some operatives you're going to leave staying at home, or some gunners that you are knowing that they're going to get to a spot and hold it down. So maybe your heavy weapons, plasma guys, if you're not planning on running them around, it's a good little safety net to give them some extra defense. It does mean that operative is pretty limited in what they can do and how often this comes up. It's not one I've used too much, but I'd love to hear your thoughts if you have. Crack grenades. Most teams have these available to them, so I won't go into them too much. I did see a cool tip on Reddit actually that someone suggested loading up a couple of guardsmen, getting them down the board early, and using them as a bit of a surprise double grenade attack. I did like that. It seems to be putting a lot of your equipment points in a suicide basket, but what's so wrong with that? The chronometer is one I think is definitely an auto-occlude. Being able to re-roll your ability to take the initiative or gain the initiative is pretty invaluable. We know this is a game where it can come down to initiative sometimes, getting that crucial first move. Take this one. Topographical chart is another one I kind of like. It's a little bit sneaky, but it basically lets you get a second of the scout options. So barricade, the dash, changing order. It's a good one to add a little bit of an extra dimension to your setup, get a jump on an opponent thinking they can see what your setup is, give you a little bit of extra cover. It's pretty versatile, and for 3 equipment point, it's expensive, but if you use it wisely, it can be pretty damaging. So there you have it, guys. That's roughly it for this video. In terms of the tactics of the Veteran Guard, I think I've kind of hinted at it a lot. For me, it's all about using them together, using the synergy to make each operative bigger than the sum of its parts. So, they are all lasgun guys at heart, but they've got to use those specialties to obviously play to their strength, but also help support their teammates. So use of things like your spotters, using those extra bodies, using the group activations, all those different bits and pieces of what makes the Veteran Guardsmen strong and makes them effective. You're one of the few teams that is Horde, but you've actually still got some quite damaging weapons amongst all of that too. So you can take casualties, but you can still deal out damage as well. Play the objective with these guys. Don't be afraid to see them die. In fact, hey, I actively encourage watching them die. That's dark. But it'll pay off because even their TAC ops encourage that kind of behavior. These are, it's the Krieg. This is what they want. It's what they're made for. They're all about the war of attrition, and they're all about putting pressure on your opponent, giving your opponent a lot of operatives to think about. And while they're thinking about, the group of 5 guys over there's a whole nother 5 guys doing mission actions and things like that to make it difficult for your opponent to win. They're a very good team at forcing your opponent into some tough decision making, and that's how I find the most successful way to win games is give your opponent too many things to think of and they'll make mistakes. And that's great to do when you got 14 models on the board and they can all do a bit of damage. So look at it that way. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. This has been another fun video. As always, this is my time to say please subscribe. I think we're approaching, or we're at 400 subscribers at the moment, and I really, really appreciate that, guys. You've got no idea how much it means each time I bring a video to watch that come out. It means you guys are enjoying the videos and that you want to see more. And if you keep following me, I'll keep pushing out these videos as quick as I can. Let me know in the comments below what you'd like to see as well. What other videos? I've still got the Chalnath box set I'm putting together, so if you want to know about the new sister models, Tau, Drakari, what is it you want to know? What are the teams you'd like me to do this type of video about? Please let me know and I'll get onto it. I've got far too many models and lots of time to talk about painting them and putting them together. So I'll also do my next video will be a follow-up to my Elder team that I was making. I've got some updates on that. I've been building, painting, modeling. That's been taking up a lot of my time, but I'm really excited for you guys to see them and to get them on the table and take them for, for some battles as well. That's it for now. Thank you so much, guys. My name's Reese. This has been Threes to Wound, and we'll see you next time.